I was looking for something to cover a little bit later, so I go to Greg Locke's website, right? A Global Vision Church or whatever, and I happen across this. This is his most recent sermon, right? And I'm just kind of scrolling through. I know it's about 45 minutes in before he actually starts preaching. So I get here, and look who it is! Mike Lindell, the pillow guy himself. Mike Pillow. Okay, yeah, this is where he introduces him. So let's just skip back like 30 seconds, see what Locke has to say leading up to it.
There's nobody, and I mean nobody in America, that has put more personally skin in the game into election integrity than this man. There is no doubt. I mean, we're talking about putting your money where your mouth is, amen. And I mean, he is sown into this nation to make sure that we know that this is still the God-blessed nation, the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, and we're not going down that easy. The ship's not going to sink anytime soon.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Since we're going to be watching Lindell, I think this is about the point. What do you guys think about playing a game while we listen to this for a few? It's looking like Breath of the Wild. We got 43 votes for Breath of the Wild, 21 for Mario Maker. Okay. Breath of the Wild it is then. Let me just flip over so you guys can see it. And boom. I'm going to try to start saying boom goes the dynamite more. And boom goes the dynamite. Okay, cool. Let's listen to Greg Locke and Mike Lindell go completely unhinged while we play some Breath of the Wild, shall we?
Vision, I want you to get on your feet. Make welcome my friend Mike Lindell to the platform. Hallelujah.
His opening statements have got to be nutty, right? I haven't seen this yet. I just saw that this happened in the first place like 20 minutes before I went live, so it's got to be good.
He's not just the founder, he's the inventor of My Pillow. God bless you, brother.
Honestly, how did a pillow manufacturer get so filthy rich? A billionaire. How did he turn into a billionaire? Are pillows really such a hot commodity?
Here, I love you.
Thank you. I actually took some notes here. Usually I don't do that. I watched Roger Stone last week. He goes, I want to be surprised by what I'm going to say. Thank you. I want to tell you, here on Father's Day, the importance of Father's Day.
Oh, it was Father's Day. Okay.
And the family.
And you know what else it was? Actually, it was Juneteenth. Notice he's not mentioning that, at least not yet.
I want to say a couple of things. You look what's going on, like in Michigan now, the Attorney General wants to put a drag queen in every school. It's disgusting.
Ridiculous culture war nonsense. Constant culture war BS with these people. It's like, isn't this freedom of speech and freedom of expression? Isn't that exactly what this is? When did Republicans like Mike Lindell or QAnoners or whatever suddenly become anti-freedom of expression? This blows my mind.
But they did a poll in a prison in Kansas. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. And how many of the inmates in there, remember these are felons, where both their parents got married, planned their child, had the child, and were still married while the inmate was in prison? 0%.
Okay, I doubt it, but okay, let's just continue on. I'm listening.
As you moved up to the county jails, then you had more marriages staying together and more fathers in their lives. And so I'm just going to put that out there because it's kind of like my story. I'm going to tell you a little.
Okay, let me point out exactly what he just did. Here's the problem, okay? A lot of the time, Republicans like this guy or QAnoners or whoever else, they like to lean in on this culture war issue. Like, the problem in society is fatherless homes. People just aren't taking care of their kids, blah, blah, blah. It's a cheap, easy way to blame the individual instead of addressing the problem on a societal level. Name the problem, and this is the solution that they have for it. Fathers, stay in the home. You want crime to go down? You want blah, blah, blah? It's all fathers stay in the home. We could also try rising people out of poverty. I mean, there are a billion things that we could try doing to solve problems, and we haven't tried any of them. But instead of addressing these solutions or mentioning them or any of that stuff. He wants to lean on it's the individual's fault. People are irresponsible. Fathers need to stay with their kids, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I agree. Yeah, definitely. That shouldn't exempt the government from trying to find a government or a society-wide solution to a lot of these problems.
A bit of my story, and then I'm going to tie it into where we're at today as a country and as a world, actually.
As a world, okay.
My story starts, I was in 1968, I believe it was.
Oh, God. You know what we should have done? I should have created a bingo card for Mike Lindell. Who wants to bet he's going to talk about, let's see, what's he going to talk, what should be on the bingo card? He's going to mention his addiction, his drug addiction, for sure, right? He's also going to mention Lindell TV and Frank's Speech TV. He's definitely going to mention his social media at least once.
7 years old and my parents divorced, and I was put into a new school where I was the only child from a broken family. Divorces weren't common back then. So I put in, and I right away, the devil got in there with the lies that I wasn't good enough. I didn't think I fit in. I was very kind of introverted, if you can believe that. I wouldn't talk to people, or I would show off and say, watch me jump out this bus window as the bus is going 40 miles an hour, you know?
Okay, this guy obviously has some kind of a, like a mental condition that he's dealing with, and I feel like the right is largely taking advantage of that, and it's kind of sad to see, honestly.
So I either became a show-off or I would not talk. And I think this is common when in childhood, the fatherlessness in our country and what's happened is just, it manifests into the devil getting in there and with these lies. But so for me, I'm gonna.
Boy, I bet his dad is regretting not hanging around now, isn't he? Again, this is just his answer to culture war problems, and it's honestly no answer at all. It doesn't further the discussion. It doesn't actually solve any problems or any of that. It's just blaming the individual, and it's a quick, easy way to kind of get out of questions that you're asked for politicians.
I'm going to fast forward, and I'm going to go, okay, I was introduced to, I became an addict with alcohol, but then cocaine I was introduced in 1982. And when I got in cocaine, it was, and like all other addictions do, it gives you a false courage, but it also masks pain.
Some people may not know this about me, but I was an addict for years also. It was heroin for me, or actually it was OxyContin originally, but eventually it turned to heroin when OxyContin was no longer available, and I was so motivated to help other people who were in a similar situation to me. I went to college for substance abuse counseling eventually. I take addiction very seriously. It is my whole life trying to help people find their way out of it and things. Or at the very least, it was the basis of my entire motivation for everything for a long, long time. And now I think my motivation centers more around helping people escape religious cults or destructive cults in general. But the training that I had when I went to college for substance abuse counseling has definitely come into play since getting into this field. I mean, they were psychology classes. I took classes on all types of different psychology subjects and sociology and stuff. So, yeah, I don't make light of addiction. I'm glad that Mike found his way out of it. Really, I am. Not saying that sarcastically.
And those two things, the masking pain and the false courage, but it was perfect for me. And that time, I was always an entrepreneur, so I was always doing different things. And like my sister she popped a waterbed on the second floor of an apartment building and flooded the whole apartment complex. So,
oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare. What's the point? How does this get us further into the discussion? I don't understand.
I became a carpet cleaner. It was problem solution.
Okay.
Well, anyway, So I was a very functioning addict. I prayed to God. I had to skip through all this stuff in the early 80s. I had everything happen to me you could imagine. I had 14 near-death experiences. From falling asleep on a motorcycle, going skydiving, and having the parachute malfunction. So in the same day,
Yeah, okay, this is a weird story, but I'm with you so far, I suppose.
That's a bad day, and plus getting in trouble. I remember getting 17 traffic tickets on my motorcycle because I didn't have a motorcycle endorsement, and I was outrunning the cops, and I go to court.
I go to court, okay.
And it was
17 traffic violations? Don't they just take your vehicle at a certain point?
Years old, and I told my mom on the way there, Mom, whatever you do, don't tell them I can't be tried as an adult or they're going to put me in jail. And you don't want your son going to jail. Well, we practice all the way to courtroom. We get in there. The judge comes in, and my mom stands up and goes, Your Honor, I'm tired of him getting off easy. I want him tried as an adult. I go, that's not what we practiced.
That's kind of funny. Actually, I like that story. That's really interesting.
And then I got up and said to the judge, I said, Your Honor, if you try me as an adult, what she just said should not be admissible because she shouldn't be here. And he said, Sit down, Mr. Lindell. But I thought it was a good argument. Then I said, and she would be a hostile witness.
He created a paradox. That's clever. Okay.
But anyway, I became I prayed. When I went to college for 1 quarter, dropped out, and in my 5-year class reunion, everybody there would either finish college or they had started families or they had.
He went to college for 1 quarter and then went to the 5-year reunion of it? What? Are you kidding me? Is that what he just said? That is weird, dude.
Advanced in their careers, and I had nothing. All I had was stories like I just told you. And at that reunion, I took over that reunion. I said, yeah, do you know I had the mafia at my door? They were going to kill me because I owed them for football bets, and everybody's, whoa. And well, I got home that night, and I laid in bed, and I was in tears. There was a deep sadness that came over me that I really wanted what they had. And it was just a loneliness like I've never felt. And I prayed to God. I'd always have these reactionary prayers. Remember that term, reactionary prayers. I'm going, God, please, I just want a family. I want children. I want grandchildren. I want this is what I was praying for. Well, I was handed that on a silver platter in 1987 and was married 20 years. And I want to say right there, I was a very functioning addict. I think everybody thinks of addiction as people in the streets, homeless. I've been there too, but it doesn't matter how many forks you eat with. Addiction affects all of us.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, this is definitely something that I can agree with him on. I'm glad that he's bringing awareness to this problem. I just wish it was somebody else, man. Really, somebody else, please. Not Lindell.
All of us, from 0 forks to 4 forkers and everything in between.
0 forks to 4 forkers. What is he talking about? What does that mean? I don't understand. Okay.
And so that was 20 years, but during that time, I remember, I had a bar. I was an entrepreneur. I had bought bars. I would always just kind of addiction. I'm going to tell you, addicts are hard workers. Addiction is hard work. It's one of the hardest work there is. You're constantly hiding, chasing, all kinds of stuff. Well, I had a bar.
He said he was a functioning addict, so I'm not sure how he would know any of this. He said he's homeless, or he said at one point he was homeless. He said he was hiding and working and all this other stuff. How would he know all of this stuff if he was a functioning addict? Usually these are traits that non-functioning addicts exhibit or things that they have to experience. I don't know. I'm just suspicious of his claim that he was a non-functioning addict. Or I'm suspicious of his claim that he was a functioning addict at this moment.
For 13 years, and not a good place for an addict, but when the bars would close at night, we'd go to my friend's house or whatever, and we'd be doing cocaine, drinking, whatever, and I'd be sitting there telling him about Jesus and stuff that I read in Revelation when I was in jail. I would always read the Bible when I was in jail.
Yeah, that tends to be a problem, honestly. There are a lot of like really deeply religious people in jail. Like, they kind of shove religion down your throat, you know. In some cases, you even get extra yard time, or you get extra time outside the cell if you are going to like the chaplain or whatever else. It's not good, honestly. Some people have turned to Islam instead of Christianity, but Christianity largely dominates the judicial system, and I don't know, it just bothers me a lot. And a lot of the addicts that I knew were deeply religious people, too, weirdly.
And I go right to Revelation, you know, and I would sit there and convince them about, you know, for me it was always trying to talk myself into God. And I would use mathematics, like what are the odds? You have a 1 in a million happen or a 1 in a billion happen. You add them together, when does it become a miracle, okay?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be charitable here, but I really don't understand what he's talking about. You have a 1 in a million and 1 in a billion. When you add them together, when does it become a miracle? What? What's he saying? I don't understand, like, at all. I'm trying. That is weird.
And I'm going, this is impossible. This had to be God. This has to be God.
You know, even like basically 1 in a trillion chances, if it's not impossible in the universe, then it's likely that it's going to happen if it's not impossible. Like, people don't fully understand, people like Lindell, I don't think they fully understand just how vast the universe really is. It is ginormagantuan. It is huge. The chances that some planet would eventually create life, or life would form on it, given enough time, 4.5 billion years, it's likely, because there are so many planets out there. There are so many chances, so many atmospheres, so many everything. It's extremely likely that life would form, and that's why many scientists are so deeply convinced that aliens must exist, though we haven't seen hard evidence of them yet.
And so I kept adding them together. But I would tell my friends this, and some of them would find the Lord, and the next day my friends are going, will you quit talking about God? We're losing friends here. You know, they would go.
That should be a sign you're an extremist, Mike. That should be a sign that you're going down a weird path that's making everybody around you uncomfortable. Somehow that didn't click in his head, I guess.
But so I'm going to bring it up to I invented my pillow. I got divorced in 2007. But
wait, he invented My Pillow, the brand, or he invented his pillow, like Mike Lindell's pillow?
I turned to crack cocaine in the early 2000s, and
okay, so he did coke in the 80s and then crack in the 2000s. Interesting. Okay.
You know, not that one addiction's worse than another, but we didn't make jokes back then like, what are you on, alcohol? It's like, what are you on, crack? You know, because it was so far out there.
Yeah, crack, I've heard, is the worst. It's a terrible addiction. And honestly, the guy is like Nutter Butters, and he has deep issues that need to be resolved desperately. Obviously, some mental thing happening right now, but I do have deep respect for anybody who kicks an addiction, any addiction at all, and most of which, crack, is like absolutely terrible. I'm really honestly surprised and proud of the fact that he managed to. Like, that's really deeply impressive, honestly.
I invented the pill in 2004, but I was turned down by all the box stores, which has come full circle.
He invented My Pillow in 2004, but nobody would sell it, and now he's come full circle. That's funny. Yeah. Well, I wonder why. Any bead on why that's happening, Mike? Like, you connected the dots on that yet? Do you think maybe it's because you're a complete conspiracy theorist who runs the risk of getting banks subpoenaed for their records You think there's any possibility that maybe it's because you've turned into a full-blown terrorist at this point? Or no, has that not crossed your cashew?
But I didn't give up. And then someone said, well, Mike, why don't you do a kiosk? I said, how do you spell that? And we ended up doing this kiosk. You know, it took me a year to invent my pillow. I just put everything I had into it, and foam's flying around the neighborhood, and my sons and I are out there, you know, trying different things. And so when I finally had it invented, like I say, I was turned down everywhere. So we do this kiosk, but I couldn't do it because I couldn't talk to people. Of course, I couldn't be their high. But if people came up, they're right in my space. And you don't get, when I look back now, it was fear of rejection. Well, you don't get rejected if you don't talk. It's a pretty...
I actually have the same exact problem. I absolutely cannot go door to door anymore. Like, I used to do that when I was a Jehovah's Witness, you know, go around knocking on people's doors, trying to peddle my magazines or whatever. Can't do it anymore. I cannot force myself to. In fact, a few years ago, I went to an SSA convention. I think I had 50,000 subbies at the time. I was a tiny little fella. I went there with Genetically Modified Skeptic, and we were running around trying to give away T-shirts for free. It was just free shirts, you know. And he gave me some, and he took some himself, and he's going to just give them to the first couple people he saw. I couldn't bring myself to go up to a random stranger and offer them something for free. I could not do it. It's just, after being a Jehovah's Witness for so long and them basically crippling my social experience, or crippling my ability to talk to people anymore. I just can't do it. I simply can't.
Simple concept. If you sit and you're afraid to speak out, you're not going to get rejected, you know. But so I couldn't do that kiosk, but I was there. And this is like a little divine appointment I want to tell you about. I was there maybe 2 of the days, and my wife at the time, she did all the other days. And we had borrowed money. We had borrowed money from an ex-bookie to be able to afford the kiosk anyway.
God, I just don't get gambling or working with bookie. Where do people even find bookies? Honestly, I have no idea where people would even find one of those. Gambling seems like such a bad idea to me. I have never been into gambling at all. It's like these people are literally rigging it so that you lose. You know that, right? Why would you gamble if they're intentionally setting things up so that you lose? Just doesn't make sense to me, honestly.
And but I was there this one day, of the couple of days I was there, this guy came up and I sold a pillow. And he said, you have a business card? I go, no, I'm all out. I didn't have business cards. I wrote it on a piece of paper and gave it to him. And so we go through Christmas. We had to borrow money to buy Christmas presents. I had 4 little kids at the time. We had to borrow money to buy Christmas presents for the kids. The kiosk was a complete failure. And other than, you know, we had sold, you know, some pillows, but we lost another $25,000. Well, in January, as I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm not going to give up, right? I'm never give up. And about that time, I'm going, once again, kind of a reactionary prayer. Okay, God, get me out of this. What am I going to do? Because now I can't even feed my family. And all of a sudden, that guy called. The one day I was at the kiosk, and he calls up and he goes, are you the guy that invented this pillow in Minnesota here? He goes, I said, yeah. He goes, well, it changed my life. He said, I run the Minneapolis Home and Garden Show. Would you like a spot in there? And I'm going,
wow, so it sounds to me like he's saying that he invented something that's apparently cool. People like, I guess. I mean, I don't see what's so special about my pillow, but okay, so he invents this thing, right? And then he prays for God to, like, help him because he's suffering, and then people start buying his pillow. How about that? So I guess he attributes all of his success to God making his pillow, like, take off or whatever. Mike Lindell still exists. Indecision 326. Yeah, I know that it seems like, why are we even talking about the guy anymore, right? But he is actually still extremely influential. The guy has his own TV network, for one thing, Lindell TV. He has his own, like, social media network, Frank Speech. And I know that it's kind of like a niche thing, but there are actually more than you would think there are. There are a ton of people who watch his TV show and watch his, or get on his social media network and all of that stuff. He is far more influential than you'd think. That's why we cover him. In fact, I just covered him like the other day on my Fireside Chat YouTube channel. I covered a bunch of clips from him. It was really interesting. Apparently, Walmart stopped selling his pillow, or my pillow, or whoever's pillow. They stopped selling pillows from this guy. And he was, coming unhinged, making all kinds of crazy claims about how they're actually still selling them, but they're getting cheap knockoffs from China, the whole 9 yards. You know how Lindell is. Absolutely ridiculous.
A guy called that one day I was at the kiosk, and he calls up and he goes, "Are you the guy that invented this pillow in Minnesota here?" He goes, I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, it changed my life." He said, I run the Minneapolis Home and Garden Show, which
I feel like changed my life is a little hyperbolic when you're describing a pillow, but okay.
like a spot in there, and I'm going, "Sure." And then, "Can I write you a check?" And so I go to this show, and the first day I put a table in between me and the crowd so I could talk. It was like a block, right? Don't come into my space. If I would literally, I smoked back then. If I would go out to smoke a cigarette, someone would say, "Hey, can I?" and start a conversation. Say, "Hey, I got to get back in there."
Yeah, because he said earlier he's like really, really antisocial and didn't like talking to people and stuff. And I relate with that a lot, honestly. I was the same way after spending a lot of my life knocking on doors with Jehovah's Witnesses. I definitely relate to that. I didn't want anything to do with door knocking or talking to random people or anything like that anymore after leaving the religion. So definitely get where he's coming from on that.
I just couldn't talk to people unless I was behind that table. So these people come in and I sold 18 pillows that day, and I had done my own marketing behind there and, put the place like guaranteed the most comfortable pillow you ever own, because I would guarantee them that. I went and anyway, they came up, I sold these 18 pillows. Something happened that never happened before or since. The next day they paid, back then it was like $10 to get back in the show just to come and tell me that this pillow had worked and it changed their lives. And I was just like, whoa. And
dude, it's a pillow. Come on. It's a pillow. What is so special and unique about this pillow that it changes people's lives? Give me a break, Mike.
And for
yeah, I can't. Honestly, I can imagine people being hyperbolic like this. I can. So it's not that I'm not believing his story. It's just ridiculous is all.
It wasn't about the money. It made me feel so good inside about myself that I had done something to help somebody else.
Yeah, that's definitely important. Doing things to help other people, that's a big motivator for a lot of people.
And I was hooked on that feeling, and so I did home shows and fairs for like 5 years from 2004. And I got, like I say, things happen then. You'd have to read my book, What Are the Odds, From Crack Addict to CEO. But things had happened, divorced, and there were lights out in our living room. Our house, they turned the power out. We were actually making the pillows and labeling it with a magic marker in our living room. And my wife at the time couldn't take it anymore. She just had to leave. It was literally, and that was the spring of 2007. And as it got divorced, it rolls into 2008. And it was February of 2008, and I was downtown Minneapolis, right where they burned everything up down there. And
more culture war issues where they burned everything up. Talking about Black Lives Matter protests, blah, blah, blah. Just culture war nonsense, of course.
One of my friends' places got burned up during the riots a couple of years ago. Well, anyway, I had been up for 14 days with no sleep, and
Not true. It is physiologically not possible to stay awake for 14 days and not die. You die after 10 days. This is a known phenomenon.
I come out of the bedroom, And all three of the big drug dealers are standing there, and they're going, that they knew of each other, but they had never met. And I go, what are you guys doing? They go, we're cutting you off. The one guy says, Ty says, we're cutting you off. You've been up for 14 days. And I'm going, I've only been up for 12, you know, whatever.
Nonsense. Complete nonsense. A drug dealer is going to cut you off because you're destroying your life? No. That is not how drug dealers work. Take it from somebody who dealt with drug dealers through the entirety of my drug days. I know that drug dealers will not cut you off because you're buying too much from them. That's like Mike telling people, "I'm selling you too many pillows. I'm not going to sell you any more. You're buying too many." It's ridiculous.
And the one guy says he's not getting anything from my people, and because they all had like sections of the town right there where we were, and so two of them left.
What he's describing is what you see on Breaking Bad. I'm honestly not convinced that this guy knew three people that ran gangs that had territories, and that these people were so concerned that Mike Lindell was taking so many drugs that they would cut him off for his own well-being. Just this whole story is nonsense. I buy that the guy was addicted to drugs. I get it. And I'm so deeply proud of the guy for finding his way out. This is nonsense, though. This whole thing, this is total nonsense beginning to end, what he's saying here.
And he sat, and he's going to wait me out. He said, how much crack you have left? I showed him what I had left, and he sits there in the chair. No, I'm out of crack, and I'm carpet farming. Anybody knows about crack, scraping the pipe, and for 14 days, I'm getting, even have the paranoias weren't even going on because it was up so long. Well, I looked over.
You will die after 10 days of being awake. He was not up for 14 days.
He was asleep. So I tiptoed out the door down to the streets of Minneapolis and tried to buy crack. And I couldn't buy crack anywhere. And in any city in this country, you can get crack in the middle of the night, trust me. And they're coming up to me, they're going, no. Well, they had gotten the word out by the one dealer and said he had went.
Do you know why crack is so accessible? Because all you need to do is take Coke and cook it. I'm not going to give you the recipe or whatever, but cook it in a pot, basically, is all you have to do, pretty much. There are almost no other ingredients. It is really, really easy to make, and it's cheap, and anybody can make it. That's why crack is so accessible. It's the same with meth. It's really, really easy. Well, relatively easy to make. I would say crack is easier to make than meth, but it's not like the barrier to entry isn't like you don't have to be a chemist to do this, That's why it's so readily available. I'm sorry, Mike. I simply don't believe that the three top dealers in your city cut you off and every lieutenant that they had under them refused to sell it to you. It's ridiculous. Like, if you're gonna lie, then make the lie believable, honestly.
Down to the street, said, if you see some crazy white guy with a mustache, you sell him crack and we're coming after you. So the word had got out, and these guys.
If you see some crazy white guy with a mustache, that's funny, actually. That's pretty amusing. That's a really funny way to put it. I liked that, Mike. That was a funny lie.
He had went down to the street, said, if you see some crazy white guy with a mustache, you sell him crack and we're coming after you. So the word had got out, and these guys are backing away like there's something wrong with me. I searched for an hour, and I finally come back upstairs, and he's waiting up for me, and Ty goes, how'd that work out for you? And he goes, man, you've been telling us for years that this My Pillow thing is just a platform for God, and you're going to come back someday and help us all out of this addiction world we've been living in.
Oh, no. Is Mike going to tell us that these three, generals in the drug dealing business that he knew cut him off because he was doing too much, and then he introduced them to his pillow and they gave up their drug dealing ways? Is that what he's about to tell us? Please tell us that, Mike. I'm begging you.
And this is what I would tell them all the time, like I told my friends after the bars would close. I would see this, like I am going to quit and come back and help other people get off, right? Well, he goes, give me your phone, get off the drug. And he goes, give me your phone. I'm going to take a picture for that book you've been telling us you're going to write someday. And if we have that picture, it's if you put that picture up. Yeah, this picture right here. I don't know if you can get it on the other screens.
All right, let me switch screens so you guys can see it too. I assume that this is him in his crack days.
But anyway, this is the picture he actually took that night. And it's on the cover of my book where it turns from a crack addict to where I'm at now. But anyway, but I didn't quit that night. And the 2008, what happened in 2008, I look back in my life and say, you're going to look back too, and when we get through all this, you're going to say everything had to happen just the way God intended. I was very incorrigible, about as incorrigible as we come, because I knew, and then that, I had a calling, and that God had chose me for the calling. We all have callings. But I'm going, wow, if my callings, if this is so big, I can procrastinate and not just, I could literally, my sister would say, you better quit standing in front of semis because God's going to pick someone else, Well, two things.
I don't understand that saying. You better stop standing in front of semis or God's going to fix someone else. I guess the saying is, if you don't stop hurting yourself, God's going to give up on you. Is that like the saying or whatever? That's weird. That seems like a very anti-Christian statement or belief or whatever, right?
Things happened that year. In October, my son and I, one of my sons, we went on a hunting trip. And he was 18 and he was living with me. I'd already lost my house and lost everything with the crack. Well, he was living with me at the time. He was 18. We got back from the trip and he stood in the driveway. And his lips were quivering as he told me, he goes, Dad, I want to go live with Charlie. And I thought I was hiding it from him. And it hit me so hard. I said, sure, you can go live with that. I had in the morning.
Who the holy frick is Charlie in this story?
I'm crying inside. And I still think back to that. But when that happened, it was just like, I'm not hiding it from anybody. And then in December of 2008, I had nothing left material-wise, and my pillow was just a little blip on the radar. And that little blip on the radar, I wasn't doing shows then. It was just kind of, like I say, it was just out there, and I hadn't done anything with it in months. Well, my friend came to me. He was my match in every way. His name is Dick Van Sloan, and him and I had both started cocaine at the same time, switched to crack at the same time. He was a functioning addict. I was. All our friends were. Well,
it doesn't sound like he's a functioning addict based on what he's describing, based on the story that he's telling. He was not. He was not a functioning addict. I know he wants to give that impression, but he was a train wreck. If he stayed up for days and days at a time, he was not functioning. I mean, there's this term called chipper. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but chippers are people who are capable of doing drugs recreationally and only occasionally, and then just giving up on them, just walking away from it whenever they feel like. They don't ever actually get addicted. They just do drugs whenever they want and then walk away just like that. And it's like I don't know, it hasn't been studied in great detail, but they think that there's some kind of a genetic mutation in people who are capable of doing that. That's what I think of when I hear functioning addict. It doesn't have to be that. There are also people who do drugs every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, doing coke or whatever else, and they're keeping a roof over their head and they're keeping food in their bellies and taking care of their families. That's what functioning addict actually means. Whether you are addicted or not, you still manage to maintain relationships and family and keep your electricity on and all that stuff. It sounds to me like Mike is describing his wife leaving him because of his addiction, right? Because he couldn't keep enough money to keep the lights on and stuff. Am I mistaken? Am I misreading what he said? He was not a functioning addict. He sounds like he was a train wreck.
He had quit 3 years earlier, and I heard he had found the Lord. And all of a sudden, he shows up out of nowhere, okay? I hadn't seen him in 3 years. And
that's not a good thing necessarily. You got to hear the rest of the story. Quit clapping, people. Have these people never dealt with addicts in their life?
And he said, I go, Dick, what are you doing here? As I'm staring at the ceiling at this house out in the woods, he goes, the Lord brought me here. What are you doing? And I said, Dick, as long as you're here, I have some questions for you. The first question I asked him, is it boring? And he said, no, man, it ain't boring. And now to this day, and I talked to him for 2 hours, to this day, I don't know if I was asking him about Jesus or being off drugs, right? But either way, he said it ain't boring, you know. But I didn't quit that day. He left, and then...
If I knew somebody was an addict, if like we were both addicts together at the same time, and I didn't know if he was clean or not, that's a good question I would have asked to figure out if he was still addicted. Is it boring? That would be a good indication about whether or not he was clean. If he was clean, he would say yes, and he'd be proud of that fact. Being bored after getting clean is something you take pride in. Because as an addict, you're constantly rushing around and trying to figure out how to get money, then how to get drugs, and then go to sleep. Your whole life revolves around it. There is no boring section of it, and it's misery. Absolute misery. That's what I'm reading from what Mike Lindell is describing here. I don't know. When was this recorded? Mike Lindell went to Greg Locke's church 3 or 4 days ago. June the 17th, I think, maybe. So longer than 3 or 4 days. It's the 23rd as of this moment, I believe. Not to defend Mike Lindell, but as someone with both sleep issues and neck issues, if I ever found a good pillow, it might change my life. P.S. That pillow is not the My Pillow. I tried 2 years ago before I knew he was crazy, and I didn't like it anyways. Yeah. I know that pillows can definitely be life-changing, but give up on drugs type of life-changing? I don't know. That's pretty life-changing.
On January 16, 2009, I prayed that night. I said, God, I want to wake up in the morning and never have the desire again for drugs or anything. And I said, and then I'll do whatever I'm called to do.
The desire doesn't just go away like that. It is with you forever. For the rest of your life, it's with you, unfortunately. That's just how this whole thing works. It will never fully go away.
And I will...
It's a lifelong struggle, and that's the reason why, like NA or AA tries to frame it like it's a permanent addiction, it's a permanent problem that you have to face or whatever. It doesn't have to be permanent. I mean, yeah, it will always be in the back of your head. If you come across it ever again, then you're going to have the desire to try it again. But you can walk away from it and effectively be completely cured from addiction, in my opinion. At this point, going to group therapy or counseling or whatever else isn't going to do me any good. I am so far removed from any drug addiction at all that there's effectively no chance of me going back to it, in my opinion. I really do not worry about it at all for myself. It's simply not happening. So take that for what you will.
And I woke up that next morning and it was like Groundhog Day. Something's different. And the addictions were gone, the desires, right? But
that's not how it works. You can't pray to Jesus to remove the desire or to remove addiction. That's honestly deeply wrong that he would even imply it. Oh, and NA and AA are largely religious organizations that tried to replace drug addiction with Jesus. Drug addiction and God operate in the same part of your brain, and they operate in similar ways. And that is the reason for NA and AA's at least partial success. They're attempting to replace the desire for addiction with Jesus. And they're replacing an addiction to drugs to an addiction to Jesus, basically. And that's deeply wrong for a number of reasons. But aside from the fact that that's deeply wrong, what happens when your faith is challenged? I mean, what happens if you come to realize that this whole thing is nonsense and there's absolutely no reason to believe it? Now you have nothing left in that place where drugs used to be, and you haven't really dealt with any of the emotional reasons that you did drugs in the first place. You should be working on finding the reasons why you turned to drugs in the first place, and you should be dealing with those. You should be dealing with it. Instead of replacing drugs with Jesus. Secular therapy is the way to go. Do not use NA or AA, please. Don't do it.
But I want to tell you that I thought that was me finding Jesus, because it was such a drastic change in my life, and I didn't have the desires have gone. They've left me forever. Well, about 2 months later, now my pillow was just, like I say, a blip on the radar. My sister says, pray for favor. And I had, these guys had stole my company, and I had to come up with $30,000 cash. Make that long story short, I went and met with.
Somebody stole his company. How did that happen? How do you steal someone's company like that? It's in his name, isn't it? Didn't he have a patent on this and all that?
And I had to come up with $30,000 cash. Make that long story short, I went and met with eight C's. I come in there, and they're all dressed in suits. Remember, anybody that wore a tie and a suit and ate with more than 2 forks, I was afraid of, right?
What is this fork thing about? What does he mean, more than 2 forks? What? Who eats with 3 forks? I don't understand.
But I walk in this room to borrow this $30,000. I walk in, they're all wearing suits, and I start telling my story. These guys took my company. I need $30,000. I'll pay you back $40,000. I said I used to be a crack addict, but I'm going to do these home shows. I'm going to get back my company, and I'm going to help people in addiction. Their CFO goes, "When did you quit crack?" And I said, "Last Thursday."
Yeah, not great for a vote of confidence there, Mike, but okay.
There you go. And 4 of them got up, looked for the cameras, and left the room. The other 4 stayed there, and they ended up doing it just because, but they ended up doing it, and I did end up paying them back a couple months later. But I'm going to get past that story. 2 months later, I felt led to go to a church. It's up in Minnesota. It's called Living Word, and they had a program called Living Free. And I was led there by it, and I go, well, why am I going? I wanted to find out why I was an addict in the first place, and it just, because if I was going to help people, right?
Interesting question. Why was I an addict in the first place? That's a good start to addiction recovery. Not Jesus. Jesus is not going to help you drop the cravings. You need to figure out what caused this in the first place. That's the correct step to take, not praying.
So I get to
That's the science-based step to take. Figure out why you were an addict in the first place, what led to this, and then you can try to solve that through therapy and other means. In my case, I became an addict because it was a situational thing. It wasn't because I was trying to mask pain or anything. I was in a situation, and Kylie's mom was in that situation. She was trying to mask pain, and I felt that I had to kind of follow her lead on things, and that's really what led me down that road.
It just, because if I was going to help people, right? So I get to this this outpatient treatment, call it, And I walk in there, but this is before this, I see the counselor, and the next night is my first class, right? And I come in there, I go, yeah, I quit crack 2 months ago. I said, I quit everything. I was a gambler, compulsive gambler, alcoholic, all this stuff. And I'm going to write a book someday. I'm going to have a platform. I'm going to help the world. I'm going to have a recovery network. And I'm telling him all this stuff. And he's going, okay. And he went home and told his wife that night, he said, you should have seen this guy that came in, higher than a kite, but everything I said came to fruition later on. But one of the things though, that first day I went into that class, I walk in there and I start a typical treatment, where they shame you. Oh, your family doesn't love you because look what you did. And now you spent all your money. And
I don't feel like, there may be some out there that do that, but it's not about shame. It's never about shame. Never. Drug rehab should never be about shaming anybody for anything. It should be about how proud they are of you for coming in the first place. A lot of people have to hit rock bottom, and some people hit rock bottom and keep going. And it's honestly really hard to drag yourself out of that deep, dark hole, basically. Anyone in a 12-step program would tell you that thinking you'll never use again is the first step toward relapse. Isn't that stupid? Yeah. That's their cheap little trick to keep you going to NA and AA. I call myself a recovered addict because I don't believe in the idea of, God, I can't think of it, where sin is permanent. What's the word I'm trying to think of? It's just not coming to me. Eternal sin? Is that? That doesn't even quite, maybe eternal, yeah. It doesn't sound quite right, but anyway, I don't believe in eternal sin. I don't believe that you're sick and need to be made well by God. I just don't buy it. I just don't. I'm sorry. And that's effectively what NA and AA are trying to sell people. You are sick. You will always be sick. You have no way of getting well. You'll never get well. And you need to come to us to solve that. I just don't buy it. I'm sorry. I am a recovered addict as far as I'm concerned. Not a original sin. Oh my God. Yeah, maybe that's the one I was thinking of, but it's actually eternal sin. I just don't agree. I'm not a recovering addict. I'm a recovered addict. I don't need to go to NA and AA groups for the rest of my life to try to solve this. Anyway, let's keep listening.
And well, we know that we're addicts. Then you feel worse inside. And anyway,
That's exactly right. We know that. We're addicts. Then you feel worse inside. That is exactly why these groups are not supposed to take that position or espouse that opinion that people, hit rock bottom and you're terrible and you're evil and all that. You're not supposed to take that position. You're not evil. You're just as good as anybody else, just as good as the next guy. You just found yourself in a tough situation. That's it.
Telling about all my drugs, this grandiose behavior, telling about how much he goes, no, we don't care what you did. Tell us about your father. And I'm going, what? What do you want to know about my father? I had a good childhood. And they started digging into that. And then with this thing was to dig into the roots. And then there was a whole program that you end up surrendering to Jesus, okay?
That's pretty standard NA and AA. This is one of the many reasons why I don't like it. You shouldn't have to surrender to Jesus. You don't have to surrender to Jesus to solve these problems. You can solve them by secular means. Replacing the drugs with Jesus is not helping anything or anybody. Don't go to NA or AA. They're worthless. Go to a normal therapy session, a normal secular therapist to help you deal with this. That's what you should be doing, in my opinion. In my professional opinion. I can say it's my professional opinion in this case because I did go to school for this.
Well, I didn't finish the program, but those seeds that were planted in there come back now, and that I'm going to tell you right now. So I get out of this treatment thing, and I spend years getting back my pill that was taken, okay? The first infomercial I did was in October 7, 2011. My friend...
Oh, it was an infomercial. That's how he got famous. Wow, that's funny. The infomercial pillow salesman is now a billionaire. That honestly does blow my mind.
Friends and family, we pooled our money. Remember, we couldn't get in box stores. We pooled our money. I said, I have a vision. We're going to have the biggest infomercial in the world. So we pulled it. I didn't know infomercials don't work. It's only to go into box stores. And so I live in my sister's basement, my other sister. It's October 7, 2011. That first infomercial comes on TV. And it was just surreal for me. And I had like 10 employees at the time. 40 days later, I had 500 employees. But over the next 6 months, we took in $100 million. And I said to my friend, I said, do you know the ATMs don't go to the 7th digit? And he goes, I didn't know that, Mike. Well,
ATMs don't go to the 7th digit. So what is that? That means an ATM can only dispense 6 digits worth of stuff. So $99,000, I guess. You can't get 100,000. Honestly, I doubt ATMs will. No, that's not. You can't withdraw $10,000 from your bank without them reporting it to the IRS, I believe. The reason I know that is because Ken Tovand got in all kinds of trouble for what they called structuring. He was withdrawing $9,900 from the bank, just under that $10,000 limit. By doing so, was avoiding taxes. That's structuring, and it's very, very against the law. From my understanding, you can't remove more than $10,000 unless it's from a bank directly. I honestly, I'd be surprised if you can remove it from an ATM at all. Even $5,000, I deeply doubt you can even do that. But I don't know. I've never seen $10,000 in person in my entire life. I think the most I've ever seen in person is probably like 2,000, I would guess. Probably 2,000. Even that is just an obscene amount of money. Oh my God. Anyway, I don't think that it matters that ATMs won't go to the 7th digit because they certainly will not give you more than 10,000. Absolutely no chance for tax reasons. It would be considered structuring if it did. Got over my fentanyl addiction with my family's love, friends, and my doctor's help. I didn't need Jesus to get over it. Absolutely. Fentanyl didn't really come around until after I had gotten clean, but it was, the same type of stuff I did. Oxy and heroin, same stuff. So I absolutely understand what that was like, 100%. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have my family's love to try to get me through, but I get where you're coming from. I get what you're saying. Well, I did have some family's love. I had Kylie's grandparents to help me, or great grandparents. They helped me a lot, so I can't say I didn't have any family. Anyway, let's keep listening to Lindell.
And he goes, I didn't know that, Mike. Well, at the end of the 6 months, everybody, I woke up one day and I didn't use a bank. I've done it all with the Lord and whatever, helping me. But I woke up, I was $6 million in debt. I was in tears and I was doing this reactionary prayer again. God, please give me another chance, whatever I had done. And
how did this guy get $6 million in debt? Was it taxes? What was it? I don't know what caused this.
And people had betrayed me. All these things that had happened in that 2012, everything I learned from that, and so much that went on. I went back all the way to 2014. When 2014, I actually we were still about at that, and went kind of up, and then back down to about $6 million in debt again. It was the summer of 2014, and there was nothing left of my pill. It was like down to nothing. So we kind of got a reprieve, and then back down again.
Hang on, let me step back and listen to that one more time, just get an idea of what he's saying here.
When 2014, I actually we were still about at that, and went kind of up, and then back down to about $6 million in debt again. It was the summer of 2014, and there was nothing left of my pill. It was like down to nothing. So we kind of got a reprieve, and then back down again. Well, I met a gal named Kendra Reeves. Kendra, I met her, and she came in. She's with me to this day. But we we met, she says, you know, you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus. I go, yes, I do. I'm a Christian. I wear my cross on TV, and I believe in God. And it was just like, people used to call me on the phone when I was the only call center, and they would, why, you're wearing your cross to sell pillows? And I go, no, I always wore my cross. I'd send them a picture of me in a crack house with my cross on, right? And then people that were atheists would call and say, you're wearing that cross or whatever, and I would tell them about Jesus. They'd find the Lord, and I would keep, and I haven't.
And then everyone clapped, right? Atheists called me up and said, you're wearing that cross. And then he would tell them about the Lord, and they became believers just like that. And then everybody clapped. What a ridiculous story, dude. This guy, look, if you're gonna, why don't you just tell the truth? You left addiction behind and became a billionaire through pillow sales. Why do you have to make shit up? Just tell the truth. None of this is true, like at all. This is all nonsense. Coming from somebody who was an addict and an atheist, you're lying. This is nonsense, top to bottom. You just made all of this up. Your story is plenty interesting without you lying about it, Mike. Just tell us the real story, please.
Found him yet, right? So Kendra kept saying, we have to pray, and we prayed for my pillow, and she prayed that I would find the Lord, right? Well, I finally, after all the encouragement, things started happening to me. Remember I told you about mathematics? Things started happening to me in the summer of 2015, or actually the spring of 2015. I had a dream I would be in a room with Donald Trump. I go, why would I want to meet Donald Trump? And
yeah, why would you?
These things kept happening at these divine appointments, and I'll just fast forward through all of them. They all kept happening. I'm going, this could only be of God. This could only be of God, okay? So
You know, if I became a millionaire, or I'm sorry, a billionaire, not millionaire. If I became a millionaire overnight, I guess I could see the appeal of saying, holy shit, how did this happen? It must have been a miracle. But it's simply not. It's statistics. Statistically, a certain number of people are likely to become billionaires through these crazy means. And you worked hard for your whole thing. Like, you didn't just walk upon $1 billion sitting in the street. You invented something. That's not divine intervention. That's just you having a mind for business or whatever. I don't understand why people who have accomplished things of their own doing, their own free will, thank God for it. What? Why would you thank God for this? God had nothing to do with it.
It was called a drop zone for veterans, even though I'm not a veteran. And I went into this 5-day retreat, and I went in there with hope that I could get that personal relationship that Kendra had, and then I seen it in other people. I knew I didn't have that. I didn't know how to get it. And I went in there, and on February 18th, 2017, everybody, is the day I got on my knees and surrendered to Jesus Christ.
But this whole time he's talking about how he was praying to believe in Jesus and all this stuff, wasn't he? Why is this suddenly like... Why is he suddenly bowing down to Jesus? This is just weird stuff, man.
And one of the things, the relief I felt, there was something I could never forgive myself for that he had forgiven a long time ago, and so had everyone that knew me. I just could never forgive myself. And when I did that, there was such a relief, too, that I knew whatever God had called me to do now, I would be able to do it, okay? Well, two things happened. One is 2 months later, here's a guy that couldn't talk. I was at U.S. Bank Stadium at a Pulse event, a Christian event in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I have 50,000 people, and I'm talking. Here's a guy, and I do this really short 5-minute testimonial, and I lead this whole place in prayer for like a minute. Don't even know what I said. And two weeks later, we're at this amusement park, me and my granddaughter. And all these millennials are coming up, and they're not coming up because of my pillow. They're coming up because they were at that event. They go, your story, it gave me hope. I found the Lord and all this stuff. I'm going,
uh-oh. He found the Christian cult in the area that were like roving about looking for gullible suckers to rope in, it sounds like.
And I knew that I was on the right path then, just like back then when I had sold those pillows to those people. God confirmed that. You know, Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understandings. In all ways acknowledge him and he will guide your path. Well, that was an acknowledgement to me from God. And finally, my granddaughter, though, she has to say, he's my grandpa. We need to go on rides, you know. But then, but a couple months later, I get brought to the White House, invited by the then President Donald Trump, and our great president.
So I guess Mike Lindell is a recent billionaire, right? Is what it sounds like. I think he said he made his first like $1 million in 2011 or something, somewhere in there, right? He said 2015 he was doing events and stuff. In 2008 he was still struggling. So it's only been like 10 years or so, I think, since he's become a billionaire. Honestly, how do you become a billionaire as a pillow mogul? I had no idea it was so booming. I hate people who attribute natural things to God. Yeah, me too. It drives me nuts. He stole a spot from a veteran? Oh, I missed that completely. Oh my God, dude.
I get there, everybody. I get there, and here's a guy with my record. I didn't think I could come within 2 miles of the White House. And I'm walking through the White House, and it's just surreal going, man, did they check my past? I don't know. And so we get to this round table in the West Wing. There's 12 other companies, small business or whatever, I can't remember, manufacturer, whatever. And I'm sitting there, and I look over, and this one doesn't have a name tag. And all of a sudden, he comes in, he sits down, it goes live on national TV. Now, here's this picture. Here's that picture. And that, now when this picture came on TV, all my friends, all my crack friends that were on crack back then, they quit immediately going, Jesus is real, because there's no way this is possible.
Oh, please, really? All of your friends that knew you when you were on crack, they're also on crack. They all quit drugs immediately as soon as they saw you on TV and knew Jesus was real. Give me a break, Mike, please. Now it's getting crazy right here. Now it's getting crazy.
That this crack addict is on TV with the President of the United States. And that was a miracle, everybody. And I'm going to tell you, to wrap this up, I want to tell you, we all have platforms right now, and we all have callings. We're all here for such a time of this in history. And I want to tell you, by the way, before I tell you this last minute, I want to tell you, if you're hurting out there in addiction, I do have that LindellRecoveryNetwork.org, and it's...
Wait, .org? Or did he say .org or .cord? C-O-R-D. Where do I go to get this Lindell Recovery Network thing?
Free. You go there, it's free. You'll find your hope match, and
please don't go to Lindell for drug addiction help. Don't go to NA or AA either. If you have to, then you can go to NA or AA, but find a secular one. There are NA and AA groups out there that lean on the more secular side. It doesn't have to be like in a church basement. If you can afford it, ideally go to secular therapy. Go to a secular therapy group if you need help with this.
So that's LindellRecoveryNetwork.org. And if you know someone that's out there, remember, if you're an addict, they need a different input to get a different output, okay? And when you get off addiction, that's just a bonus. Is finding a personal relationship with Jesus Christ is the big win.
This is why you shouldn't be going to Lindell's Recovery Network or whatever else. Don't go through him. He is not going to help you. He's going to force Jesus on you. And that's not helping anybody, honestly.
And where we're at now, and I'm going to tell you this, the 2020 election will go down in history as the most important election ever.
I can agree with that one. It probably will. It was the election where democracy nearly died and may still die. It's very possible democracy will die in the 2024 election, depending on who's running and what they choose to do when they do run. Very, very disturbing stuff that we're looking at right now.
And here's why. This has all been on God's timing, okay? Everything that's happened has been on God's timing. Just like 2012 with my pillow, if I didn't learn from that, if I hadn't learned from that and made all those changes where I've sold 76 million My Pillows, over 2,000 employees, that if 2012 hadn't happened, I wouldn't be in that place right now. So I'm telling you, with the 2020 election, everything that has happened is meant to be. More and more people every day are coming to Jesus like you wouldn't believe.
It's interesting. He says everything that happened is meant to be. I mean, theologically, that checks out. Theologically, that makes sense with all the people praying to God that, you know, Trump would win the election or whatever else. It only makes sense that God's will has been done on earth if they really do believe all of this stuff. Like, how do you tell people you prayed to God that Trump would win and then he loses? And how do you tell people that you think it was stolen after that? By just logically following the logic of this situation, that means necessarily Satan overpowered God. Satan forced a situation to take place that reversed God's prophecy, right? That's what that means. It can't mean anything else. It just blows my mind that people believe that the election was stolen after all the prayers. Makes no theological sense whatsoever. Smart Recovery has online support groups, and they're completely evidence-based, no higher power bullshit. That is awesome. Thank you so much for that. Smart Recovery. I will definitely shout that out and take a look into it myself. .corgi. Yeah, .corgi. That's funny. Why would God allow people to get addicted to drugs? Is he a sick freak or ruining people's lives with drugs just to get you to go to him? That's the view that they have of God. Yeah, it is, bizarrely. They view him that way. It's just weird, man. I don't get it. Is that really the end of Lindell's whole thing? I hope not. I hope there's more to it.
We are in the greatest revival in history. This is historic time to be alive. It's the time, the best, you know, this is a battle of biblical proportions of good and evil. And we need that different input to get that output. When you have all these bad things going out there every day, I'm telling you, all these things, just think of it this way. You're out there, and all these people are going, hey, I need hope. I need hope. In December of 2019, people weren't looking for hope. It was Merry Christmas. Everybody had improved. Their physical life here had improved. So they're not looking to Jesus.
What? What is he? Did he say? When did he say? What was the year he gave us?
In December of 2019, people weren't looking for hope. It was Merry Christmas. Everybody had improved. Their physical life here had improved.
No, not in any way, shape, or form. People were suffering terribly in 2019. He's talking about before the virus hit. No. He seems to be like, he has tunnel vision. He thinks the only people that exist or are even worth talking about are Republicans who love Trump. Everybody else either doesn't exist or don't matter anyways. So yeah, I guess people who love Trump were doing really well in 2019, but the other 70% of the country or whatever weren't doing so hot at that time.
So they're not looking to Jesus. But God's given us grace, everybody. He has given us grace for such a time as this. And if you don't have courage, if you're a pastor or anybody, if you don't have courage now to step up and reach out to people that are feeling hopeless, you know, you're saving your courage for a rainy day when it's pouring outside. It is pouring. And I want to tell the last thing I'm going to say is I hear it from people all the time. I prayed and my prayers weren't answered. My prayers weren't answered. It was going.
Weird how that works, huh? People's prayers are not answered, like, entirely too often. Kind of makes you wonder if there's anybody listening in the first place, right?
I prayed Donald Trump would won, or I prayed that this would have happened and he'd have been put back in, or I prayed and things keep getting worse. Well, let me tell you something. Those are reactionary prayers like I used to have. Those are reactionary prayers. And they might not be God's will. Well, where is God's will, everybody? God's will is in the Word. Okay? So if you stay in the Word, you can be proactive in prayer, and you're going to see they all line up and beautifully. And when we get through all.
What does that mean? I thought the guy was about to tell us why God isn't answering people's prayers who prayed for Trump to be president. I thought that's what he's going to tell us. So this is his explanation for why God isn't answering those prayers, right? What's the answer? I'm not understanding. Let me just reverse this like 15 seconds and listen again. What's the explanation, Mike? Lay it on me. Why isn't God answering people's prayers to set Trump up as the president?
Reactionary prayers like I used to have. Those are reactionary prayers. And they might not be God's will. Well,
and they might not be God's will. Okay, so the idea is maybe God doesn't want Trump to be president, right? Is that what I'm reading? That's what I've been picking up like the whole time he's been talking. He mentioned something about it earlier too, right? That's actually a big deal for him to say that. A really big deal.
Where is God's will, everybody? God's will is in the Word. Okay? So if you stay in the Word, you can be proactive in prayer.
So if you read the Bible and you stay within the confines of the Bible, your prayers will be answered. Is that right? It sounds an awful lot like he's trying to shut down the idea that Donald Trump is like the new Messiah, like a lot of people have been trying to imply or outright saying. That's a common thread among evangelicals right now, trying to make their congregations think that Trump is the new Messiah. Patriot Church especially worships God and Donald Trump. I've covered them a few times on my channel. Pastor Ken Peters, if you're curious, look him up on my channel. He's a real nutter butter. He has seamlessly integrated church and state. He has seamlessly brought Donald Trump in as the new Messiah. He talks about Trump regularly as the de facto new Messiah coming in. So it sounds to me like Lindell is fighting against that idea. Am I reading this right?
And you're going to see they all line up and beautifully. And when we get through all this, we're going to look back into this beautiful place we're getting. We're going to have God back in our schools. We're going to be once again one nation under God.
God never left the schools. What happened was the Supreme Court decided that Muslim teachers are not allowed to force students to say Muslim prayers with them. And when they made that decision, Christians fell under that umbrella too. Students are perfectly allowed to pray to their heart's content. Teachers are allowed to pray to their heart's content. Teachers are not allowed to force students to pray. That's the difference. But once again, this is how propaganda works. This is how they view the world. It's all about forcing religion on people at any cost. If they can't force religion on people, then they're being persecuted. That is how these people tend to view things. Disconnected from reality.
When we get out here, we're going to look back and we're going to say everything had to happen just the way God intended. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
It's interesting that, like, the subtle message that I was receiving from this is that Lindell is trying to make it clear that Trump is not the Messiah. Because up to this point, they've been making it out as though he was. Although Greg Locke has kind of turned on Trump, give or take, a little bit. He doesn't talk about Trump very often anymore. He talks politics a lot. And he's definitely a QAnoner. I mean, full-blown QAnoner. But yeah, he doesn't really, like, support or talk about Trump anymore. Not really. Not since January, I think, of 2022. Let me find when it was exactly. Here it is. I got it. Okay. This is from, early January 2022. This is around the time when Donald Trump basically came out in support of vaccines. And Greg Locke, being the QAnoner that he is, believes that vaccines are evil and blah, blah, blah. So Locke comes out on stage. This is a really big deal when this happened. He says this, listen.
So I'm going to say something. I don't care how ticked off you get. I'm going to say something. Listen to me. Stop. Everybody say stop. Stop sitting on your butt and waiting for Donald Trump to do something in this nation. Stop it.
You have no idea how big of a deal it was when this happened. This was like earth-shatteringly big. This means that the evangelicals were turning on Trump at the time. That's what that meant. It was a big deal, a very big deal. And it was fantastic news for those of us who don't like Trump and think that he's a threat to democracy, or recognize that he's a threat to democracy, not think. We've seen the results of his destructive ideas and beliefs and actions. So anyway, let's keep listening to Locke here.
Stop it. He gave the evangelicals a mighty voice, and I'm glad. Whether he runs or not is on him, not on me. But I'm sick of Trump worship in this church.
I mean, he encouraged that Trump worship. It's a direct result of his actions. So, yeah.
You hear me? Let me tell you something. He was lied to and he knows it. And his arrogance won't let him change his mind.
Again, all of this is over the fact that Trump endorsed vaccines and tried to get his people to get vaccinated. Seriously.
I'm telling you right now, on the authority of the Bible, if Donald Trump does not get out in front of this vaccine nonsense, he is going to lose his voter base in the next coming election. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
That's a big deal. That whole thing right there is a really big deal. And for that reason, I'm assuming I'm assuming Mike Lindell came on and decided to try to dispel the idea that Donald Trump is the new Messiah, like Greg Locke was implying up to this moment in January when he turned on him. And like a lot of other churches do. A lot of churches, Johnny Enlow and Ken Peters and many, many others, believe Trump to be the new Messiah. Still, to this day, right now, they believe that stuff. So, anyway, interesting little theological phenomenon, if you will.